Hi everyone, my name is Jennifer Quigley and I'm a member of the teaching team and I'm hosting our open hours for the week. I just wanted to talk about three themes that we noticed in your discussion and responses and questions this week. The first of these is Paul, Jesus, and the Gospels. And I wanted to start by offering just a little bit of clarifying information to remind us that Paul did not know the historical Jesus. This presents both an opportunity and a problem for Paul. The problem is that Paul is claiming to be an apostle. He's claiming to be one who is called. So where is he getting that call from if he didn't know the historical Jesus? But it's also an opportunity for him because it allows Paul to share his experience of having received a revelation of Jesus Christ. He makes the claim to apostolic authority, to being called, in Galatians 1, verses 11 to 12. And he claims it's a gospel that he's received not from human origin or from a human source, and he claims not to have been taught it, but that he receives it through a revelation, an apocalypsis of Jesus Christ. Second, Paul did not know the historical Jesus, but he does claim to have come into contact with several other apostles. In Galatians 1:18, he makes mention of seeing Cephas, that's Peter, and in Galatians 1:19, he makes reference to James, the brother of the Lord. He's both tying himself to these other apostles and tapping into their apostolic authority, but he's also distancing himself from them a little bit by claiming to have not gone to see them immediately after receiving this revelation. So he's both getting to tap into these other apostles who've been called, but he's really staking his claim on receiving his call through a special revelation, an apocalypsis. And third, we wanted to clarify that the gospel that Paul's talking about is not a written gospel. The Gospels weren't written down, most scholars will agree, until 70 CE and following. And so whatever it is that Paul is talking about as gospel is not a written gospel. So it's a great question to continue to explore. The second theme that I wanted to talk about is terminology. I wanted to explain a little bit about why it's important that we be careful about using the term Christian when we're talking about the letters of Paul or other texts from the 1st century CE. I'm going to give you two reasons why we on the teaching team, you'll find, won't use that term Christian when we're talking about the letters of Paul or anything in the 1st century when we respond to your discussion posts and questions. The first reason is it's historically more accurate if we don't use the term when talking about the letters of Paul. As Professor Nasrallah has told us, Paul does not use the term Christian at all. And in fact, our earliest use of the term probably comes from the book of Acts 11:26. And we also know that the Romans didn't have a term for Christians until the Pliny-Trajan correspondence, again, also early in the 2nd century. And so for that period that we're talking about with the letters of Paul, mid-1st century CE, it's important that we remember that the term Christian is not being used. The second reason is a long history of Christian anti-Judaism. If we talk about Christians in the 1st century and in the letters of Paul, we tend to fall into a trap where we think about Christianity as a formal entity presented over and against Judaism by Paul as being superior to Judaism. And that has led to a lot of anti-Jewish thinking among Christians over the centuries, and it's not very historically accurate. We'll see, especially next week, lots more information about how complex the relationship is between these early communities in Christ and other Jewish communities and the diversity of Judaism in the 1st century CE. Stay tuned for videos next week. You will learn a lot more about that topic then. But in the meanwhile, I would really encourage you to be careful in your own discussion posts and questions about thinking about what am I talking about right now? So should I use the term Christian or should I use the term members of an ecclesia, members of a community in Christ? And think very carefully about the terms we're using. The third theme I want to talk about has to do with the teaching and learning that we're doing together as a community. The teaching team has been delighted by all the responses that we've been receiving, both from annotating on Poetry Genius to the responses on Facebook, and especially the answers and responses that you've been giving to all the different discussion threads on edX. We appreciate the volume and enthusiasm of all of your responses. But we want to challenge you as students to go further, to begin to imagine interacting with one another more. One of the reasons that we had, for example, videos of graduate student discussions was not just to share more information with you, but to model the type of learning that can happen in a classroom when students are interacting with one another, and it's not just the teacher didactically offering the right answer to students. And so we want to challenge you. If you see a post that you disagree with, respond to that post in a respectful and polite way. Maybe you can help your students see things your fellow students see things in a different light. Or if there's a post that you agree with and you have more information from another source, respond to that post and cite that source that you have. You can help your fellow students to learn more and to learn with each other. Get into a dialogue online. Are there ways that you can go back and forth with other students and continue to further the conversation that you've had? I really want to encourage you and challenge you to do this because I found it so helpful in my own scholarship. Many of the classes that I've taken at Harvard in my doctoral program are structured just like the ones that you saw in the videos of graduate student discussions. They are interactive, the multiple students are helping one another to read or think through a text, and it really helps us not only to read text better, but it helps us to ask better questions of the text and to think more thoroughly about how we go about doing this work together. I've always found these collaborative learning environments to be the most helpful, and I want to encourage you to make this learning environment as collaborative as possible, and that's going to require your further participation. Thanks again for sticking with the course, and we really look forward to continuing to work with you in week 3. Thanks.